The father of the months-old child would have preferred that his friends held back a bit, held back from swearing, held back and stayed calm, held back while he was being crushed under the weight of the officer's biceps and knees. No, none of these reactions would have helped. They all would have diminished him even further. Aggressive measures end up nowhere except solitary confinement in Chokha, and peaceful means did nothing for him or his friends. In the context of all this, how should we interpret the meaning of their friendship? Out of all the options available to him, the man with the thick moustache reaches his conclusion. Stay silent. Accept that his friend has been degraded. Accept that he has been forced into submission. Accept that all he can do is bear witness. Just like his friend, he has to remain silent and allow the thinking organism that is the prison system to operate, and allow those brainless officers to carry out their orders. They have the necessary and sufficient knowledge of how to extinguish controversy. There are so many times the prisoner is forced to straddle the border between human and animal. One has to decide whether to uphold human values or live like the cow. In most cases, the human is reduced to an animal in order to survive. However, not the kind of animal that is totally dependent on its instincts and acts according to its predetermined condition, rather an animal with intelligence and will, a human being. There's a clear distinction between an innocent goat that sleeps without a care in the world and a vicious human with twisted, intermingled guts who violently hunts down everything and anything for survival, even preys on its own species. Cynical, but it's the truth. When a person is hungry, they rush at anything that smells like food, and if there's competition, they attack with even more ferocity. Sometimes at night, a kind-hearted officer enters the prison and comes by with beautifully coloured cakes. He creates a scene that could be interpreted as a barnyard. The officer leaves the watchman's kiosk just for a moment and enters the prison. Everyone is hyper-alert to anything with the slightest scent of food. The officer puts the box on his shoulder and then strolls over to the furthest corner of the prison, just calmly strolls over, taking his time. We are about to witness a special function of the Kyriarchal system in operation. A few officers inside the kiosk stare at the officer with the box on his shoulder. As the officer walks over in a straight line, dozens of prisoners start moving rapidly in the direction he is heading. They shoot out from various places in the prison. The greed and longing in the eyes and actions of every prisoner is like a flock of sheep that have just seen a sack in the hands of their shepherd. In their madness, they have one eye on the shepherd and another eye on the smooth stone surface where the shepherd plans to distribute handfuls of salt and minerals. The prison has become like a sheep pen. On cold winter days, when there is nothing around to eat, the shepherd throws some barley or alfalfa in the corner of the pen so the sheep don't suffer from hunger. The sheep are grateful for the kind gesture and they flock in the direction of the shepherd. But humans are a lot more clever than that. The prisoners differ from sheep in one particular way. They don't rush the officer or the shepherd, not directly, not like sheep. They move in the direction that he is moving. There is some basic and understandable competition. Whoever arrives sooner has a better chance of gulping down one or a few pieces of cake. Small pieces, but so delicious. When the prisoners arrive at their destination, all of a sudden the officer becomes just like a shepherd who reaches his hand into the sack of salt and minerals or alfalfa. The officer pulls out the cake portions one by one, But he is sure he doesn't need to divide the quantity, since as soon as he reveals the cakes, they are devoured right off the cardboard. The method of distributing the cake doesn't involve awareness of who gets how many pieces. As soon as the box is open, dozens of hands extend right in front of the officer. The officer has no choice but to lift the lid of the box and hold it above his head and shoulders. Sometimes the force of the crowd is so great that the officer loses balance and almost falls over. To stay up, he has no choice but to throw the box meters away with all its contents inside. The consequences are obvious. The bodies of all of those hands suddenly change direction. They swarm towards the box and all the pieces of cake that are scattered all over the ground. During these moments, the prisoners are transformed into something way beyond sheep. Maybe more like a group of predatory wolves, hungry wolves, wolves in the middle of winter, transformed into starving wolves, pouncing on their prey with no mercy. The cow is a fascinating man. In these particular instances, there is no way that he will be deprived. Perhaps he isn't the first one to arrive at the scene, but it is impossible to imagine that by the end of the whole thing he won't be left holding 1 or 2 pieces of cake. But I never go towards the officer to get any cake. On no occasion do I ever take even a step in the direction of the mayhem. It's not that I am an extremely proud person. It's not even that I want to maintain my humanity when faced with the option of behaving like a sheep. No, I swear, it is nothing like that. There is a particular reason for making my own proud decision. A decision made during moments when my appetite governs my soul. What influences my decision is the feeling of weakness that takes hold of me. My body is faint. I am just like a hungry fox. I imagine this particular feeling to be evidence of maintaining a basic sense of what it is to be human. From the very first moment when the officer begins his kind gesture, I know I am an animal that has already lost the game. For this reason, I always watch the spectacle from a distance. I simply watch the gorging of all of those beautiful, delicious cakes. There are a few times when it just so happens that I am standing beside the kiosk when the officer emerges suddenly out of nowhere and passes me with his box. An exceptional moment, one that perhaps someone like the cow dreams of. I am one of the first on the scene, which means that I have a higher chance of success. But again, an enormous sense of weakness comes over me, so I just look over at the prisoners with regret. Watch as they emerge out of this corner and that corner. Watch the speed with which they zoom in on the zone. I don't see myself as having the capability to compete with the cow and his friends. It is difficult for me to even contemplate the possibility of snatching up a piece of cake ahead of someone like the cow. Corridor M is on the other side of the prison. It is close to the fences, opposite the ocean. It has become known as Little Kurdistan. Here, a different form of competition over food has developed. Kurdish prisoners live in rows of rooms alongside the fences. They have brought their repressed political aspirations with them into the prison and adorned one of the rooms with the tricolour flag, white, red, blue, with the image of the sun painted brightly on it. It is interesting how, even though they have been deprived of even a single pen, on one morning they awake to find the Kurdish flag emblazoned on the door, something akin to a miracle. Maybe an officer of Kurdish heritage has drawn it there, but regardless of who has put it there, the existence of the flag means that this small region is no longer identified by a number. Right there, right by the fences, a mango tree with the most magnificent trunk grows straight up. This tree challenges the prison fences. Its long branches reach out in the direction of the prison, reach inside the prison, reach over into the roof of the corridor, and reach down for the rooms. It reaches out in a way that can't be seen from inside the corridor. One can only see it from a distance and when near the toilets. The smooth exterior of the trunk and the thick branches of the mango tree are so extraordinary that practically no one could climb it without a great deal of difficulty. Mango. Such a juicy yellow fruit nestled within the tree's wide leaves. This tropical tree flaunts its mangoes. When one experiences the sight of such a tree, joy takes hold. Joy from a tree overflowing with goodness. Joy from the abundance of its blessings. Perhaps it's the same glorious feeling a man experiences when his wife is pregnant. Without a doubt, the feeling that transfixes the hungry prisoners is something that transcends the experience of simply gazing on its beauty. It is beyond the pleasures associated with sight. This tree is undergoing a passage of growth that does not pose a threat, and so there was no reason to cut it down. A tranquility emanates out of its very essence. It is a symbol of the majesty of nature, a grand power that reaches through to the depths of the prison. As night falls, its presence can be felt even more, because once every few minutes a piece of fruit falls onto the roof of the corridor with the sound of a solid object banging against metal walls. And it seems that the fruit tumbles over a few times on the roof and then falls down by the container walls. There are a number of stages. First, out of the darkness, a bird arrives to choose the ripest fruit hidden between the leaves. Next, trapped in silence, the bird starts to eat. At once, the weight of the eaten fruit shifts. It loses equilibrium. The fruit is left dangling after a peck of the beak, and so it drops onto the roof. It rolls over and falls again, this time onto the grimy dirt floor. Finally, the hungry prisoner follows the sound of the fall, follows it to the place where the fruit lies, finds it among the piles of dirt and dried leaves. The prisoner cannot be completely certain that the fruit is just moments away after he hears the sound of the first drop. In most cases, there won't be a second drop onto the ground. The project is aborted on the first drop. The fruit will remain on the roof forever. Out of maybe 3 or 4 fruit droppings, only one will roll enough to reach the edge of the roof. To reach the end of the roof. Still, if it drops a second time, if the fruit drops to the ground, it isn't yet certain that the prisoner is guaranteed fruit. You see, on most occasions the fruit falls behind the containers or it disappears into the darkness. It's really hard for the prisoner to find it among the withered leaves. Even if he finds the spot, he has to rummage around on the ground for minutes to retrieve it, swearing, held back, and stayed calm. To retrieve it.